Your knees ache when you climb the stairs. Your hands are stiff in the morning before they loosen up. Your lower back talks to you every time you bend over to pick something up off the floor. And you have been to the store and you have stood in that aisle looking at the creams and the patches and the pills, and you have spent $10, $15, $20 on something that takes the edge off for a few hours and then wears off and you go back for more. Or you have been to the doctor and you have come home with a prescription and a follow-up appointment and a bill and the same aching joints you walked in with. And somewhere in the back of your mind, you have wondered whether there was something else, whether there was something the people who lived hard physical lives in hard physical places before any of that existed knew that you do not. There was. My name is Elias Carter. I was raised in the hill country of Western North Carolina, where my family has farmed the same ridge for 6 generations. The people on this ridge worked with their bodies every day of their lives. They split wood and turned soil and carried water and hauled hay and did it from the time they were strong enough to lift a tool until the time they were too old to stand, and they did it with the same joints. Everybody has joints that ached and swelled and wore down the same as yours do. What they had that most people today do not is a knowledge of what to put on those joints and what to take for them that came not from a pharmaceutical company, but from the land around them and the healers who knew how to use it. Today, I am going to show you what the old Appalachian healers used for joint pain, what the plants are and where to find them, and what the science behind them actually says. I am going to be honest about what works and what does not, and where the limits of plant medicine are, because I will not oversell this and I will not tell you a thing I do not believe to be true. For those who want all of it, every remedy and method I have covered, and the ones I have not gotten to yet on this channel, I have put it together in a book, and you will find the link in the description below. I will not mention it again. Now let me show you what the mountain healers knew. Stay with me. Before I walk you through the remedies, I want to say something about the way the old mountain healers thought about joint pain, because it shapes everything that follows. They did not think of pain as something to be switched off. They thought of it as information, inflammation. The redness and heat and swelling that comes with painful joints is the body's response to damage or irritation in the tissue. It is not the enemy, it is the signal. The old healers understood, not in those words, but in that practical sense, that what you were trying to do was support the body's own process of repair, reduce the inflammation that had gone beyond useful, bring circulation to the damaged area, and keep the joint moving so that stiffness did not compound the problem. Every plant remedy they used, every poultice and liniment and tea, was aimed at one or more of those 4 things. That understanding is worth keeping in mind as I walk you through each one, because it explains why these remedies work, when they work, and what they are actually doing in the body. The mountain healers did not separate the body from the land the way modern medicine does. They understood that the plants growing around them had evolved alongside human beings for thousands of years, and that the relationship between a plant and the body that uses it is older and more tested than anything that comes out of a laboratory. They had no studies to cite. What they had was generations of careful observation and the practical knowledge of what happened when you used something and what happened when you did not. That is not nothing. In many ways, it is everything. The first plant the old mountain healers reached for when joints ached and swelled was one that most people walk past every day without recognizing it. It grows in almost every disturbed area, every road bank, every garden edge, every field margin from here to the coast. It is called boneset in the old mountain tradition, though depending on where your family was from, you may have heard it called agueweed or thoroughwort. The botanical name is Eupatorium perfoliatum, and it has been used in Appalachian folk medicine for a very long time. The old healers brewed boneset as a tea for the deep aching bone pain that comes with fever and inflammation. The name boneset itself comes from the old mountain name for influenza, breakbone fever, because the deep aching that came with that illness felt like the bones themselves were breaking, and boneset was what the healers gave for it. But the same deep bone aching quality is what you feel in severely arthritic joints, and the old mountain people used boneset for that too. Modern research has identified compounds in boneset, sesquiterpene lactones among them, that have documented anti-inflammatory activity. It is not a cure, it is a support. But used regularly over time, it has a real and documented basis for reducing inflammatory joint pain. The old healers gathered it in late summer when the plant was in full bloom and kept it dried and ready through the cold months when the joints were at their worst. It is bitter, genuinely bitter, and the old people took it without complaint because they needed it to work, and it did. If the bitterness is too much, a small spoonful of raw honey helps without interfering with the medicine. What matters about boneset is not just the compound the researchers identified, but the tradition of use that identified it worth using in the first place. These were people who had no margin for error, no pharmacy to fall back on, no alternative if the remedy did not work. The fact that boneset survived in the mountain healing tradition for generations, that it was taught from healer to healer and from mother to daughter across 2 centuries in these hollows, is its own kind of evidence, not the kind that gets published in a journal, but the kind that gets practiced at a sickbed in January when the roads are iced over and there is nothing else. The second plant is one that most people today know only as a weed to be pulled from the garden. It is called plantain, not the banana relative, but the low-growing, broad-leafed plant Plantago major that grows in every lawn and every garden path and every compacted soil area from here to the Pacific. The old healers used plantain both as a direct application to a swollen joint and as an oil worked into the skin over the painful area. The active compounds in plantain, iridoid glycosides, and aucubin among them, have documented anti-inflammatory and analgesic properties that absorb through the skin and reduce local inflammation in the tissue beneath. This is not folk superstition. The compounds are real, and their activity is documented in research literature going back decades. The old healers did not know the names of those compounds, but they knew plantain worked, and they used it season after season when the fields were full of the plant and the joints needed tending. My grandmother used plantain on swollen knuckles every summer of her adult life, and her hands, for all the work they did, stayed useful and capable far longer than most people manage today. What strikes me about plantain is how completely invisible it is to most people, despite being one of the most common plants on earth. You have almost certainly walked across it today. It is in your yard, in the cracks of your driveway, growing along the path to your mailbox. The old healers saw it everywhere they looked and knew exactly what it was for. Most people today look at the same plant and see a nuisance. That gap between what the old healers saw and what most people see today is the whole story of what we lost when the knowledge stopped being passed down. A plant that grows for free in every corner of your property, that has documented anti-inflammatory compounds, that has been used for joint pain for longer than this country has existed, and most people reach for the hoe when they see it. A jar of plantain oil prepared in summer will carry you through the whole winter, and it costs you nothing but the time it takes to make it. The third plant is one that the old mountain healers held in very high regard, and that modern research has validated more thoroughly than almost any other traditional plant medicine in the Appalachian tradition. It is called black cohosh. The botanical name is Actaea racemosa, and it grows in the rich, moist cove forests of the southern Appalachians in the shade of tulip poplars, basswood, and black walnut, in the deep leaf litter of the hollows where the soil is dark and the light is filtered. It is a beautiful plant, tall and dark-stemmed, with a long white flower spike that rises above the forest floor in early summer, and the old healers knew it on sight the way they knew every plant that mattered. The old healers prepared the root of black cohosh as a tincture for the deep, achy, inflammatory pain of rheumatism and arthritis, taking it daily in small amounts for joint pain and rheumatic complaints. Modern research on black cohosh has focused primarily on its effects on hormonal symptoms and menopausal complaints, where the evidence is substantial, but the traditional anti-inflammatory and analgesic use is also supported by research identifying triterpene glycosides in the root that have documented activity against inflammatory pathways. The old healers did not know any of that. They knew that black cohosh taken regularly helped the joints, and they had been using it for a very long time before any researcher confirmed why it worked. I want to stop here and be very plain about something because it matters. Black cohosh is not appropriate for everyone. It should not be used during pregnancy. It should not be used by anyone with liver disease or liver problems. It should not be used in combination with certain medications without checking with a doctor first. I am telling you what the mountain healers used and what the evidence says about it, but I am not telling you to use it without considering your own health situation. That is a decision that belongs to you and to anyone who knows your medical history. The mountain healers knew their patients. They knew who should and should not take what. That kind of individual knowledge matters, and I want you to carry it forward with everything I tell you in this video. The knowledge is only useful when it is applied with care and judgment, and that was as true for the old healers as it is for you. The fourth plant is one you have almost certainly heard of and may have growing in your own garden right now. It is cayenne pepper, Capsicum annuum, and the old mountain people used it in a way that most people today would never think to. They prepared it as a liniment, a preparation worked directly into painful joints, using the plant's heat-producing compound to go after the pain at its source. This is not a folk remedy without basis. The active compound in cayenne pepper, capsaicin, is the same compound used in modern pharmaceutical topical pain preparations that sell for $20 or $30 a tube at the pharmacy. It works by depleting substance P, a neurotransmitter involved in sending pain signals from the peripheral nerves to the brain. Applied regularly to a painful area, capsaicin gradually reduces the intensity of the pain signal the joint sends. It takes time, usually a week or two of consistent use before the full effect develops, but the effect is real, and it is the same mechanism whether you buy an expensive cream at the pharmacy or use the old mountain preparation. The old healers were careful with it, as you should be. The same compound that reduces pain in the joint will cause serious discomfort if it reaches your eyes or a mucous membrane. Keep it away from your face. Wash your hands thoroughly after applying it and start with a small amount on a small area the first time to make sure your skin tolerates it before using it more broadly. Some people have more sensitive skin than others, and a little caution the first time is worth it. The mountain healers learned these things by experience, and they passed the cautions along with the remedy because they understood that a remedy that hurts the person using it is not a good remedy. What I find remarkable about the cayenne liniment is that the pharmaceutical industry took the exact same compound, put it in a white tube with the brand name on it, and sells it for $30, while the mountain healers have been using the plant itself for the same purpose for a very long time. The compound did not get better when it went into the tube. The price just went up. That is the story of most of what I show you on this channel told in miniature. The fifth thing the old mountain healers used for joint pain was not a plant at all. It was warmth and movement and fat. Rendered animal fat, warmed and worked deeply into the aching joint with firm strokes, then wrapped in flannel cloth and left warm through the night. The fat itself was not the medicine. The warmth and the mechanical action of the rubbing were the medicine. Heat brings blood flow to a joint. Blood flow brings the repair processes the body is trying to run. Deep rubbing, what we would call massage today, moves the fluid in and around the joint, breaks up adhesions in the surrounding tissue, and keeps the joint moving in ways that reduce stiffness over time. The flannel wrap held the warmth in through the night and let the body work while the person slept. The old healers understood from long experience that a joint kept warm and kept moving healed better than one rested cold and left still. That understanding holds up completely under modern scrutiny. Current research on joint health is unambiguous that movement, warmth, and circulation support recovery and slow degeneration. The old mountain people arrived at the same conclusion without a clinical trial, purely from paying attention over generations to what happened to people who used warmth and rubbing and what happened to people who did not. My grandmother rubbed oil into her hands every winter night of the last 20 years of her life, wrapped them in flannel, and went to bed. She was shelling beans and kneading bread dough and splitting kindling well into her 80s. Her hands hurt. She never pretended they did not, but they kept working because she kept working them and kept tending them and never let the stiffness win. I think about that every time my own hands ache in cold weather and I reach for the oil and the flannel the same way she did. One more thing the old healers recommended that belongs in this conversation: movement. Not strenuous exercise, not pushing through serious pain, but gentle, consistent daily movement of every joint that ached. The mountain people did not rest their painful joints the way modern medicine once advised. They kept using them gently, carefully, within the range the pain allowed, because they had no choice and because they discovered by necessity what researchers have since confirmed, that a joint that stops moving stiffens and degrades faster than one that keeps moving within its limits. A short walk in the morning, slow rotation of the wrists and fingers while sitting by the fire, gentle bending of the knees before getting up from bed. These were not formal exercises, they were habits built into the daily rhythm of a life that required the body to keep working, and they served the joints better than bed rest ever did. The body is not a machine that wears out faster the more you use it. It is a living system that maintains itself through use and deteriorates through stillness. The mountain healers knew this in their bones, which is perhaps why their bones held up as long as they did. Now I want to take a moment here because this is the part that matters, and it goes beyond any single plant or preparation. The mountain healers who knew these things were not mystics or miracle workers. They were observant, practical people who paid close attention to what helped and what did not, who passed that knowledge down carefully through generations, and who had no alternative and no safety net, and therefore could not afford to use things that did not work. Everything that survived in the mountain healing tradition survived because it worked well enough to be worth teaching to the next person. That is a rigorous filter in its own way, and it produced a body of knowledge that holds up remarkably well when measured against modern research. The pharmaceutical industry makes billions of dollars every year from joint pain, anti-inflammatory drugs, pain relievers, prescription biologics, cortisone injections, joint replacement surgery, the whole cascade of interventions that follows from a set of aching knees or swollen hands. Some of those interventions are genuinely necessary, and I am not telling you to refuse them. What I am telling you is that the plants growing on the ridge above my house, the ones the old healers knew and used and taught their children to use, have real documented activity against the same inflammatory pathways that the expensive drugs target. They are gentler, they work more slowly, they do not switch the pain off in 4 hours the way a pill does. But used consistently over time, they reduce the underlying inflammation rather than masking the signal it produces. And for the ordinary joint pain of a life lived hard and physical, they are more than adequate. The old mountain people lived and worked in their bodies for far longer than most people manage today, and they did it with these plants and these habits and nothing more. Nobody profits from telling you about bone set tea or plantain oil or a flannel wrap. Nobody runs an advertisement for a cayenne liniment or a black cohosh tincture. The knowledge was free, passed from one person to another on this ridge for as long as anyone can remember, and it stayed free because there was no way to make money from it and therefore no reason to advertise it. The pharmaceutical companies have no interest in a remedy that grows on the road bank and costs nothing. The pharmacy has no interest in a preparation you make from the weed in your garden. And so you were never told, not because it does not work, not because it is dangerous, because you're not knowing it is worth money to someone, and you're knowing it costs them nothing but a customer. Tell me in the comments what kind of joint pain you deal with and how long you have been dealing with it. Tell me if your family had any plant remedies for it that were passed down. I read every single one of these, and the things you all share from your own places add to this knowledge in ways I cannot do alone. For folks who want all of it, every remedy I have covered on this channel and the ones I have not gotten to yet, it is all in the book. The link is in the description below. Next time, I am going to show you the old mountain remedy for chest congestion and a cough that will not quit, the one my grandmother made on the wood stove every winter that cleared a chest faster than anything you can buy at the pharmacy and cost almost nothing to make. It is the natural next step from today. Until then, find your plantain, make your oil, rub your joints, and remember that the people who built these mountains with their hands knew things we are only just starting to remember.